want to thank you all for coming. Each and every one of you here today has brought something to the table in my life, and there's a reason. Through this entire episode, I've come to appreciate life and those in it more than ever. And I want to thank you, Kristen. A couple things I want to do. I want to thank my wife, Kristen, because every once in a while you get blessed big time, and you don't even know the blessing's there. When I first met Kristen, I need to go back to 1983.
Wow.
And there's Bill Gal and Sharon Gal, and I came here from Colorado to find a place to rent for my horses because I was coming to vet school at Oregon State. And everything I touched wasn't going right. And I was driving down Highway 34 in the afternoon, and I saw these people roping. And I pulled off the road and drove in there and asked. Bill helped me find some places, some people to talk to. Little did I realize that it would be Sharon Gal in 2000, in the month of May in 2000, who would introduce me to this woman who would then become my wife and make phenomenal difference in my life and the life of my children. And so I'm going to do some family introductions real quick. I'll start with the Garcia side, my oldest boy Gregory, in the back of the room. His wife, Raven, in the front of the room. Grant Tyler, back in Evelyn, with Grayson at side, and Amanda. And something special happened for us yesterday. Last night, Amanda ended up being crowned
Mrs. Oregon America.
Mrs. Oregon America. So that's a feather in our cap. And we thank you.
Garcia.
And Emily Garcia, the sister-in-law, my daughter, was crowned Miss Oregon America. So I guess it's pretty good when you can sleep in. So that's the Garcia side of the family. And now I'd like to... Oh, excuse me.
Right here.
And from the big island of Hawaii, my sister-in-law Janet, my niece Jessie, and great-nephew Tristan. And that's where I got fortunate to have leis from Hawaii. Fragrant smelling, and the Miley lei for ali'i, which is royalty. So thank God for that. Now I'm going to jump to the Kirkendall side of the family, Kristen's relatives. Jeff and Ed Kirkendall, Breezy Chapman.
Where's Jeff? Sorry, Jeff didn't go.
The Barnums, Billy Barnum, Randy Barnum, Eric Barnum, Jacob Berggren, and Cases Berggren. Who are we missing?
Well, how about the guy taking the video
Oh,
and his
excuse me. Don't be a smart ass. Help me. And Dustin and Amanda Kirkendall. I think that pretty much gathers our side of the family. For each and every one of you, thank you.
Did you introduce Ed's book?
I did.
Okay.
Oh, Kendra.
And Brandon.
Excuse me.
And Carissa.
Kendra and Cody. Carissa's here? Excuse me. Kendra and Carissa Kirkendall. Yeah, but hang tight. Carissa Edwards and Kendra Ramsey and Cody Ramsey and Huxley, the baby. I think I got them covered now. And with that, I'm going to turn this microphone over to Pastor Mike before I stumble on it anymore and ask for his blessing and invocation.
Don't go away. Don't go away. I want to tell you something about this. I had the privilege of doing their wedding many moons ago now, right? I guess it was a privilege.
No, you ask him, do you know who you're Marrying, do you
Yeah,
know
he
what
asked
you're
me,
in
do
for?
you know who you were, he asked me, do you know who you were marrying? I said, hell yeah, I do.
See,
Education there.
yeah, he's the vocal one. She's the strong one.
Damn right.
Let me define this man this way. Divine providence is why you and I are here. Let me define divine providence. Divine is God. Providence can be defined in this way. Guidance. God's guidance. And the other word is God's grace. You tell them about God's guidance because he ended up in New York, as most of you know. I would like him to tell you how that ended up happening so many years ago.
Okay. So this diagnosis came when I was gathering cows and my horse rode into a ground bee's nest and I got bucked off. And I got bucked off hard. And I don't buck off very often, but I dang sure got bucked off. And as the ground was coming up and looking at me, I said to myself, I saw all the scattering of the ground and the splintering of the ground and cracks, and I said, this is gonna hurt. Little did I know that I would be knocked unconscious and not breathing. And the only reason they found me was because the horse was pawing the bees, because I was down in grass and they couldn't see me. When they got to me, I was out cold and not breathing. So, we go to the doctor and nothing happens with the doctor. They say, oh, you got a broken collarbone and your shoulder's a little out of whack. So, by the way, I cut my neck rope and made a set of reins, finished gathering cows, and I was in the corral. And Grant Tyler comes up to Kristen and says, he's not making it. Kristen says, sense. Because I was loonier than loony. And so, off we went to the chiropractor, to Nick Klein. And thankful Nick put my ribs back in, because I knew I had ribs out. And so that was that. Several weeks later, about 8 days to be exact, I was on the road working with a broken collarbone and I started having headaches, and I was thinking, okay, it's just a matter of referred pain from my collarbone. Well, the headaches persisted. So I called my doc, because nobody did an MRI, and said, hey, how about an MRI? So they shot an MRI. Kristen and I were heading to the airport. We had cattle on feed in Texas. I shut my phone off. We got back to Eugene 24 hours later, and my phone was going nuts. The doctor said, you gotta come talk to me. So I went. They did an MRI with contrast and found out that I had this tumor. Referred me to a neurosurgeon in Eugene. And he said, oh, it looks rather encapsulated. We'll just watch it for 6 months to a year. And so I came home and Kristen said, you're going to New York. And I asked Kristen, I said, do you really want me to go to New York? Why? Because this doctor in New York City was the sister of a gal I dated 46 years ago. And I stayed in touch with their family for 46 years, off and on. Every 4 or 5 years we'd connect. And who knew? And he said, you're coming to New York. The lady did. I said, okay. Well, they moved heaven and earth by God's grace for me to get in and have the testing done. And the surgeon says, I can cut you at such and such a date. I said, well, I'm booked till the 7th of January. He kind of looked cross at me. So he said, all right. He says, how about you show up the 8th of January for testing? So we came back. I went to work. Got home at 9:30 at night on the 7th. Kristen and I leave at 1:30 in the morning on the 8th and drive to the airport, fly to New York. How good were these people to us? They sent a doggone limousine to the airport to pick us up. Okay, I've never ridden in a limousine. That's what happens when you die.
Been in a house that fancy, it was like a castle.
Yeah, this place was a 120-year-old house that Teddy Roosevelt sat and drank brandy in and smoked cigars in the grand ballroom. This is above and beyond my pay grade. So bottom line being, we go meet with the doctor, and they start talking about how wonderful it is that the tumor's on the right side and that they can cut. And the only problems I'm going to have is perhaps the ability to speak, which I think Kristen would have thought, boy, that'd be a good thing. Make that sucker a mute. You might shut up. Or cognitive ability. Then they said, you may have some problems with your left hand, and then my antenna went up. I said, hey, that's unacceptable. I make my living with my left hand, and the song I play on the radio is I-O, so off to work and go. He says, oh, well, go downstairs and talk to the neuroradiologist, because we're going to have to change things up a bit. So we went downstairs, and the guy asked all kinds of questions, and said, show me with your hands what you do. He says, by the way, do you play any instrument? I said, yeah, I play a little bit of piano. I said, great. He says, give me 15 minutes. He goes away, and 5 of them. And when a country bumpkin from the sticks and Glide, Oregon shows up in New York City, and you got the head of the Department of Neurosurgery on down to the lowliest resident, all sitting in, conferring, you got to know that's way above your pay grade, and the good Lord's looking out for you. And he was moving in heaven and earth for me. And they came out and they designed a test to test all of my faculties, and they mapped my brain. So for a little over 2 hours I was in an MRI tube, taking instruction, typing on the keyboard, sometimes just typing, sometimes pretending I'm playing piano, sometimes getting whacked with oral stimulus to do this and do that, simultaneously throwing stuff on the screen up top in the MRI tube that says solve this sentence, complete this sentence, spell these words. Some of these are words, say what word it is. And bam, 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 bam. After 2 hours of this, I come out of there and I'm wrung out. What they did was God's blessing for me, because they mapped my brain. Number one, that's a great thing, because now I know there is a brain in there for sure. That's been debatable for a number of years. But number two, they knew how much they could cut. So 2 days later, I kiss everybody goodbye. They laid me out on the table and go to Carter. They put me in something called stereotaxis. So there I was, laying on the table with bolts in the back of my head, holding me straight like this. And I was there for 9.5 hours, not 9 hours. 5 hours in, they come outside, or the doctor comes out and tells Kristen, I'm going to have coffee. They wheeled me back in the MRI, too, because they had one in the OR. And they go to peekaboo and seeing what's there, if he got it all, quote unquote. They tell him to come back, so they interrupt his coffee break, and he goes in and carves a little bit more, but they know with a micrometer how much he can carve without messing me up and how much was there to get. Why is this by God's grace? Because that tumor was a tumor that I probably packed around for between 30 or 35 years. It was very common to young men. And it came out almost 100% intact, virtually. But there was one edge of the tumor that had begun to roughen. And they were concerned that in months it would have burst. And if that had happened, we wouldn't be having a birthday party. We'd be coming to a memorial service. And so in the front of the deal there, Kristen had a picture of me at Jesus' wedding, taken by Dustin. And I thought, well, wow, they got the memorial service already going. Kind of made me nervous. But by God's grace, within 2 hours post-op, they were concerned that I wasn't going to be able to talk. I was talking like an auctioneer.
About income tax breaks and racehorses.
I'll go for the tax break. From where the heck do the racehorses come from? I've never owned one and never will. The next day they got me up to go for a walk, and the first thing the lady said was, "You slow down." I said, "Walk." I was just striding out. And then I got humbled because I just told the lady, I said, "You said walk, not run." I said, "I'm not shuffle." Well, then I got to walk by some of the other rooms and see the people laying there, and I thought to myself, you ignorant person, shut your mouth and be thankful to God for the blessing you have. And so then they said, come on, let's go to the therapy area. You're going to walk stairs if you think you can. I said, hell yeah. I was supposed to walk stairs for 5 days. So this is already blowing them away. And that's God's grace. On the 4th day, we were back in this house in New York City, and in their grand ballroom, they had a baby grand piano. And this lady doctor said, as I recall, you used to play the piano. I said, play a little bit. She said, yeah. She said, sit down. So for 45 minutes, I played a piano recital. And they taped it. Not only taped, but videoed it. So they could assess this hand. By God's grace.
You're also going to use that at one of the next conferences because you're like the poster child for post-brain surgery. Like nobody can play the piano like that after what you've been.
And no one had walked down the hall like that. There's a lot of no ones. When they started me on chemotherapy, because I'm an aggressive human being and I had places to go, people to do, things to do, people to see, I have work to do. They did chemo and radiation simultaneously. And at the end of, I got to tell you this is about arrogance and this is about getting schooled on. I was angry because they told me that this was such a successful surgery that they were going to do a 3-week chemotherapy, 3-week radiation, so I started looking work. And one was a prestigious ranch on the Big Island of Hawaii, Parker Ranch. And when we got there, it was going to be 6.5 weeks. And the girder factor came in. And I had been talking to this lady doctor and her husband, who's also a cardiothoracic surgeon, world renowned, about they needed to trust God in their lives with their oldest son. And I went to bed that night grumbling, and she was ready to take my radiation doctor to the tumor board on my behalf, because, and what the tumor board was, getting every doctor that's worth a hoot in the county and beyond together to assess the case. And in the middle of the night, this happened with both me and Kristen, independently. I was spoken to in the middle of the night where the question was, do you trust me? And I thought, do I trust you? Yeah, I trust you. Then why are you asking when I put this doctor in your care, you in this doctor's care? I thought, holy cow. What a hypocrite to tell somebody to trust God, and I can't trust God because it's not convenient for me. So therefore, the next morning I woke up, I said, and I looked at Kristen, she was in bed across the way, and I said, we're going to stay, she said, in New York. She said, I was visited last night and told to stay in New York. She said, I was about to take you on. I said, not a problem. I said, I was visited last night. So I decided right then and there, okay, Bubba, better pay attention because the good Lord has blessed you and He is talking to you. It's high time you listen, you shut up, you stay the course. Now, let me tell you why it was so important and why God put that radiologist in my life, because my chemotherapy doctor was the head cheese. And my surgeon, back when I was working in Hawaii in 2020, I threw blood clots in my right leg. As a matter of fact, I threw 5 of them. And I did not have any downtime. I returned to work, flew on the airplane, with the help of a physical therapist and a doctor showing me what to do, I'm certain that I gave those pilots fits because I was in the back bathroom every 45 minutes doing calisthenics. And I'm sure they were wondering what the heck was going on because I was changing the pitch of that airplane. And so I was on blood thinners. They took me off blood thinners. And 3 weeks later, I was supposed to start. This chemo doc says not necessary. If your blood parameters are normal, everything's fine. 5 days into chemotherapy, I have weakness while Kristen and I are shopping.
On the second floor of Macy's, he was like, that's all I wanted to do was shop.
Well, that was retail therapy. There's radiation therapy, RT, and RT. Retail therapy. Actually, the blood clots happened on the bottom floor of Target where we had to shop for groceries. I never shopped for groceries in a Target store. The escalator was off and I'm carrying these sacks of groceries up the stairs. About halfway up, I got weakness from my hips to my knees and shortness of breath. And so I stop and Kristen keeps going on and she's like talking to the dog, well, come on. Kind of sitting there, I said, well, wait a second now. So then I get my strength back and walk up to the top of the stairs and I'm thinking, boy, this chemotherapy is kicking my butt. Rest again and off we go. 4 days later, I'm sitting in the radiation doctor's office. He says, well, how's things going? I said, pretty good. I said, is you tolerating everything all right? I said, yeah, so far. He says, well, tell me what's going on. I said, well, I had such and such happen a few days ago. He says, you're going to the ER. He says, you got blood clots. I'll bet you. And his nurse practitioner is shaking there, don't bet him. He's right. And I had probably, and still probably am packing, two of the largest blood clots, most lethal that I could ever have. One in each pulmonary artery. And if it weren't for this man, I'd be a dead man. Bottom line. And when you can return, my first 8 days on the road was 140 hours of work with 2 blood clots, one in each lung, pulmonary artery. So do I know that God has granted me His favor, His protection, and safety? The answer is yes. And the fact that He returned me to function, and I'm still able to do my job and keep up with the kids, equal to or surpass, is by His grace. And I know it. And with that, I'm going to let Pastor say grace, because this probably ran longer than it should have. But thank you for your time.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? Let's pray. So, our Father, I want to thank you for the undoubted guidance that you gave Kristen and Greg, undoubted grace that you granted. All the way along, you superintended, and we're grateful. We're grateful for this day, for these moments that we have together. Thank you for making it possible for us to do this. So I pray that as Greg celebrates this birthday and we help him with that, that you cause us all to appreciate your goodness. So please have your way in our time, in our conversation. Bless the food of strength and nourishment, and we'll thank you for it in Christ's name.